Hi everybody, and welcome to day 3 of this restoration of this Delorean time machine. Now today what we're going to try and have a little look at is, I'm hoping the welder's going to have the vents ready for me to collect, and we can start doing that today. I'm also going to be looking at these 2 rear pontoons and actually getting an end mark and fixing all of these props on. I've now got nearly everything for the back 2 pontoons, which is good. I've also got some metal work for the rear window, so we're going to be having a little look at that today, see if we can get that positioned and fitted. I have to keep the rear window in, so I'm actually going to be putting something in between the 2 so that I can still put some fixings, maybe some 12mm moisture resistant material in between, so that I can at least put some 10mm screws into that for fixing things to the bulkhead without it hitting the window. Once I've done that, I'm going to be looking at the bulkhead. Now, the bulkhead is a completely flat bulkhead. So what we're going to be doing is taking a section out so we can put that little cut down where the touring blower is, and then that little straight section for the VSR. Now, the only bit I don't have for this car is a new modern VSR, so we're going to be using the existing one. It does the trick. It's not screen accurate, but it's not far off, and it'll do for this and can be added on at a later date. I also have some dash boxes. So we'll be taking these old ones off that are inaccurate and the speedo, and we'll be rewiring all the dash. Whether or not I get around to doing that today, we shall see, but I'm here for 3 days, so we're just gonna see how far we can get in 3 days. So stick with us, see how we get on, and today I'm also going to be putting all the heat sinks on the reactor core, which is a lot of drilling and screwing, so we'll be doing that today, and we'll just see how far we get. So yeah, let's crack on, I suppose. Hey everyone, so I have got all of these little heat sinks, and we've got the reactor core here. So what I'm going to do is actually drill and attach all of these heat sinks to the reactor core. So I will probably do it on a time lapse, and I'll show you once I'm done, because there's a lot to do. So I'll put you on a time lapse and we'll see you in a minute. Hi everyone, right, so I've managed to screw all those in, get them all nice and neat, and they look good, and we've obviously got our hubcap and our stator that we're going to fit on top. Now, this stator was off of the original car, and it was a bit mangled underneath, so what I've actually had to do is actually grind off the lip. So unfortunately, it doesn't snap in as it should. On most of them, they just kind of pop in, and the friction of that holds it. Now, because I haven't got that on this, it's a little bit frustrating to figure out how to fit it. Now, what I do have is that I've got the reactor core going on top, or the stator, sorry, going on top, but this needs to come on and off easily because we're going to switch it out with the Mr. Fusion that obviously is going to be sat on a metal plate on top. So my idea is, this will obviously be bolted to a piece of metal that will slide in on the top. But what I might do is, because there's a hard bottom on this, I might see if I can work a section out in line with this, that I can have a threaded rod coming off of the engine lid. And what will happen is this will slot on, and then I can do a wing nut inside that will then pull that between the engine lid and the reactor core, sandwiching it. So hopefully, if I can get a small fixing in here, then it might just be enough that I can put a wing nut inside of here, and that will hold that down, and then when you want to switch it out, you undo the wing nut, or take your yellow cap out, undo your wing nut, that pops off, you slide this with the metal on, and then redo the wing nut up, and that is that fixed, or that fixed. So that's what I'm currently thinking. If anyone else has got another idea on how to do that, let me know, because that's what I'm coming up with at the minute, to try and figure out how to best get this to sandwich and fit on. But in the meantime, that's not too bad for the reactor core. So I will be drilling the holes, and we're getting some of the lines lined up, and I also have these 3D printed, which are the bottom half, well, they're actually the little pipe that sits on the flux capacitor at the top on the right hand side, but they're also the same fixings here up to this little section here. That is the same fixing for the 4 fuel lines that come out of the reactor core. And then that is the same fixing that bolts onto the oil separators around the back. So what I'll do, this little 1 centimeter gap's actually hosing. So if I cut it between those 2 pieces, I can then affix my hose onto these. These can be fixed on nice and neat, and they will look screen accurate. And yeah, it means I haven't got to use anything else. And then it means I can fix our fuel lines to that nice and neat. And our oil separators and everything else will just sit in and on. So we'll get that lined up. I might fix the oil separators. I need to mess around with them a little bit first, so I might do that quick, and then I will do a video of attaching those and getting them lined up. Right, so I've just managed to get the rear panel in. It's curved around the window nicely, and it's got 4 bolts, which are the original bolt holes for the louvre. So I'm going to start attaching these sections, and I'm still waiting for the lid to come back. Hi guys, right, so I've got these 3 in position, so I'm going to pre-drill and drill this, and then what I'll do is I'll line this up. This is a really lovely metal one that I got from Peter on the group. The attention to detail on this is phenomenal. It's a really lovely piece. Everything's metal inside, everything's properly twisted, bent and put on, so it's gorgeous. So Will should be really, really happy with that, but we'll get that lined up and fitted. So yeah, I'm just going to pre-mark all of these. I'll do it on a time lapse, and then we'll get that fitted, line that up and pre-drill that in as well, just to make sure that the back corner of this doesn't hit where the bonnet's going to sit. So yeah, I'll time lapse it. See you in a minute. Right, so I've now managed to mount all of this. Now, these were 3D printed ones here from Matt Parson on the group. The reason we did this was because Will wants to keep this as cheap as possible, but also trying to get it as accurate. So it's a good medium between the two, and these were prototype ones. So I'm really happy with how they've turned out. A little bit more detail can be put on, some little print work with the number on these, and yeah, they're actually really pretty good. Same with these. These are also 3D printed, included the cannons and the base. They actually go on all right, and they're pretty solid once they're in, which is quite nice. Now, this was from Peter off the group, and this is one of the real metal ones. So this is quite an expensive part, along with the metal heat tube, the ducting, which is a real one. And we've got the 3D printed Janitrol. I think it's 3D, and I also think it's injection molded as well. This one is from, I think, Time Cobblers or Marie Claire, possibly. Will got that one, and I put it on, and I painted it, so I just need a graphic for that. But we're going to get these 2 fitted. I've already put one of the terminal strips on the top window there, on the rear window. And what I will be doing is, I'm currently making a box, the little metal box that goes here to house the heat sink. Now, because we've kept the rear window in, you've lost a substantial amount of room on this rear bulkhead for putting all this gear on. So I'm trying to make a box that is semi-cut in line with this, but I've also got the curves and the drop down, so it's quite a tricky build to get that right. So I'm in the middle of doing that, but I'm going to move around now, and I'm going to try and get the ATOs and these blue capacitors lined up and fitted on. That way we can wire those at a later date, and also try and get this box fitted, which means I can then get the orange tube and the janitrol fitted as well. So I'll move the camera around, we'll try and get the ATOs and these fitted onto here, and then we can get the other terminal strip screwed on as well, and then it just means we can get the 2 metal boxes in the corner, and then we'll try and get our green torpedoes on as well. I need to still manufacture the cradle for that to go in, so I'll see if I can get that done today as well. And I'm hoping any minute I can get the engine lid on if my mechanic turns up or the welder turns up, and then we can look at getting a few other elements on. He hasn't finished the vents yet, which is unfortunate, but it happens when you're trying to fabricate, so we will see how far we get. But yeah, I'll move around, we'll get these screwed in. Right, new development. Our bonnet has come back. So if I open it up, you can see we've had some cross panels put in, mostly around the reactor core and along this back lip, because obviously it's quite a wide span between the edges. So now it means that that is not going to bow, which is perfect. So I can put all my weight on top of that, and this is going to stay as it is. I need to put 2 small adjusters on here just so I can make sure it matches the rear bumper, because it just touches and it drops down. So I'm going to do 2 little rivet nuts, and then I can put 2 bolts in, and then what I'll do is I can adjust the bolts to the right height, and that will hold that in position. Then we can start applying things onto here. I haven't got the vents back yet because there was a slight alteration that had to be done, and I'm waiting for some new alley to come in. So I wanted to get that done this weekend, but I don't think I'm going to be able to now because of that. So what we are going to do is finish the reactor core, get the reactor core fitted, try and get the rest of the bulkhead made and fitted, and we're going to try and finish this side as well, so that when the vents arrive, I can bolt those on, and everything else, all the ancillaries, will then bolt onto that. So in the meantime, I'm going to concentrate on getting a few things fitted and see if I can get the reactor core lined up, and we'll go from there. So I've pretty much got everything fitted on this side now, and I'm happy with the position and how it looks. I've also put the reactor core and all the sections on. So what I'm going to probably have a little look at is getting this drilled and fitted. I need to finish the fuel line, and I've also got a little plate to go on there as well, before obviously doing the hoses that go over. I'll also look at getting this fitted. Now, I was hoping just to put a nice little screw hole and tap it so it just sits on. And I'm wondering, because I'm going to be doing the plate for the Mr. Fusion on the top of here, so this bit will pop off nice and easy. And we'll have the Mr. Fusion plate that comes, and then it drops down. Now, I can't quite remember, I'll have to ask the guys on the group, if it drops down, sits on the bumper, and then goes across and covers all of this, or if this has to be a removable object and it sits back on the engine lid. If so, what I'll do is probably drill this and put a rivet nut, so this is an easily removable thing. Instead of having to get underneath and have a bolt or something, I could do a rivet nut actually on the engine lid. And then it means you could pop that off, and then put your Mr. Fusion lid on top. So I'll have a little think about that. I did the graphics on this, which came out nicely. And then obviously once everything's fitted, I'll dirty everything down and age it all on the car. I'm going to also, I've lined these up on this side, but I've not screwed them in yet. What I want to do is have a look at making the mount for the green torpedoes and building that as well, because that's something I've got to fabricate. So a few little bits, but it's coming along well. I'm really happy with how it looks at the minute.
Get that paper pile and watch it as it's
So here we've got the green torpedoes fitted, we've got the blue capacitors, we've got the AVOs, and we've got the terminal strip. I've also put in the little conduit, which will bend up here with the wiring coming out, and we'll connect those with terminals at a later date. Just trying to sort these two boxes, and then I've just painted there the little bolts just to go on the ends, and then we'll sort out the other end to pop into this side panel here. So I'm going to start on the inside of the car now. I'm still waiting for some elements for the back, so before I really get into the detail stuff on the back, I want to get the vents in and then get everything bolted to the vents, and then I can run the wires and everything else and bolt around it. So I'm going to leave that as it is. I've done the majority of the bulkhead, and I've done both rear pontoons. I'm just waiting for the last, the alley boxes. But apart from that, I'm going to start on the inside. Now the inside, there's a lot of extra bits on here, and Will does like his 80s stuff, which is pretty cool. But what I'm going to do is clear the car back of all the extra pieces that are in here so I can assess what I need to do. I'm going to start taking some extra bits out, change the roof box and a few other bits. So I think what I'm going to do is, yeah, clear it back and then we'll assess the situation. So I've now managed to take the majority of the stuff off the dash. That was inaccurate. Now the plutonium chamber isn't far off, and I've not got the additional bits to uninstall this one and rebuild another. So I'm going to leave what's there. It works, and the dials are all correct. It's just the frame's ever so slightly larger, but you're not really going to notice that. The Rowan controls are good. I put those in a few years ago, I think they were mine. So I'll leave them in the position because they're stuck in, but everything else on the dash has been removed. So what I'm going to do is I will reinstall the time circuits correctly. We've got a new radio that we put on, and this was a Latron one, so it looks very, very similar, and a different plate on the back. You could get these on, I think, time cobblers or something, but they've ran out at the minute. So that's a good one to get that sits on the top of there. We have the heatsink, and I'm going to put a few elements on there. I've got the dash boxes, so I'm going to just undo that extra bit of cable there, wherever that goes, and then we will start on getting it all installed again. Also, we'll have the old Speedo here, and we've got a new Speedo with GPS and the correct stickers on the front. So we'll get that hooked up and get that fitted. Also on this back, we're going to remove this touring. We've got an accurate one to put in now, so we'll reinstall this. This is a Gary Dunster flux capacitor, so it's a brilliant copy. Everything on it is absolutely on point, so no need to touch that. That's a brilliant piece. So I'm going to uninstall this. There is a little light behind this, and I think Will wants to keep that light under the original one because it kind of likes all it all being lit up. So I'm going to take the LEDs out and we'll reinstall those behind the original touring, and we'll get the touring put back in. Also, what I was thinking of doing was, once we pull all this out of the way, yeah, lovely. I was going to cut it on this point here, and then I'll bring it down at an angle, and then have the VSR on this section, but slightly more forward. So it looks a bit more accurate because obviously the touring is on the angle. So we'll change that bit around a little bit, and then yeah, we'll go from there. So I've been working on the electrics. It's quite a messy setup, and unfortunately it's hooked to a whole leisure battery system with a reader. so it's not an easy fix. But I've managed to get in there a little section where I can put my switches, and I know they're fused, and I've had to put them on just a separate rocker switch there to be able to get it to work, because this the TFC switch is all hooked up via the battery system and stuff, and it's all quite mixed, and my multimeter is reading a load of different signals on negative wires and positives, so I'm not going to touch that. So I'm adding my new system onto the battery separately, which is right there, and I'll show you how it works. So I've got this little reader off of Amazon. It was an 8-bank and I've cut it into 4 because I'm going to just squeeze it inside here. And then I've got a separate rocker switch here, so if I flick that, this kicks on. I've got 12 volts, and then these little switches individually click on. So I should be able to put all my electrics onto this. So we're going to have the flux bands, we'll have the roof box, and I'll also add probably the speedo, and well, I'll see if I can run the speedo off of this main system because it needs to hook on with that, and then maybe the extra lights that will once can be hooked into this and be fused in as well. So they're all live and good to go, and yeah, it's a slightly separate system, but it works. Right, also while I'm doing electrics, I've got 2 of these which are door modules. So I believe to do the door module, we need to pop out this middle light. Now, these are on rubber grommets, so just by giving them a little bit of a pull, sometimes you can pop them out. If not, you can use a screwdriver or anything else that you've got just to try and lever off that rubber. Once you've done that, you should be able to get the light fitting out. I believe, there we are, plugs into there. Now I'm hoping this goes in that gap. I'm not sure it will. We'll have a look anyway. So let's plug this in here. Yeah, it does fit in, that's good. And then let's put the light back on. It should go in here. A little bit crusty. Right, there we are. So that's now fitted and it's literally in line with the electrics. So fingers crossed, we pop this back in and I turn the car back on. We will see if that works. One minute. Let's have a listen. That's pretty cool. Let's hear it again. So, I like that. It's a nice feature. I'll get the other one fitted on the other side now. Right. Get this side done as well. There we are. Let's have a little look at where our electrics are in this one. These ones are much tighter than the others. And there's a reason for that. It's all been taped together. So that makes it a little bit harder. Let's see if I can get a screwdriver in to pull that section of the wiring over. There we are. Very, very tight. See if we can get that wire through. That one that way, this one. Oh, extra hard when the wires are this brittle. Do have to be careful as well, because like a lot of these, the clips won't go on, and the wires are so hard. None of that really wants to clip on or clip in. Just double check. Cool, so that works. Let's tuck that back inside. There, and pop that light back in. Right, what I'll do is I'll pop that back in there. We'll turn that on. I'll just double check it does it with the door. So, okay, yeah, that works. I think if you were to open the door, just give it a minute first. That sounds good. Right, what I also have while I'm doing the electrics is a brand new roof box. So I've taken the old one out, that was not very accurate at all. And then this one is going to pop into its place. It's going to sit about there, on there. And what I'm going to do is literally just bend these little tabs over. So that takes that off of my head, and then bring this one over slightly up here, and I'm going to have to tuck it right over. And I think to do that securely on both sides, I'm going to have to use a pair of grips just to actually bend and get it over, because it's still very tight. But I'll get the grips, get this all clipped on, and then I'll show you what it looks like after. So I had a little bit of an issue with the speedo that Will provided, but I managed to get it wired up to a USB and turn on. So we'll get that on the dash, and I'll need a USB extender cable to get that to go all the way to our little fuse box. But that's another good thing, we can get that put on the dash now, and it's all lit up, and it's good, it works. Right, I also have these to go on the dash, and these are 3D printed dash boxes with real fixings and all the real electrics inside. These are from Matt Parsons on the Builders Group, and these are 3D printed ones, and they're alright. They're a little bit cheaper than obviously the metal ones, but in general they do the same sort of thing and they look good. It's the heat resistant stuff, so it should last in the car without warping or anything. And what I'll do is I'll actually stick all three of these down a little bit later on, but just to sort of put them in and get them in position so you can kind of see what they look like in, which is like that. So they're the exact same size as the metal ones, and they've obviously got all the electrics inside and stuff. Then we've got our speedo, we've got our roans on the dash, we've got our time circuits sort of all set up. We've also got the roof box here, which I think I can just switch with this little switch here. There we are. So some lights on there. The other ones will turn on. I'm just going to have to wire those up, but at least it's some of the dash lights on and the emergency. These are all on independent switches, just the same as Peter's one, which look good. And then obviously we've got our quagmire of wiring down there, but unfortunately these cars have quite a bit of wiring on them. So I've got these on our fuse box there, and our lights here are also on here. So that's good to get that and that wired up. I'm also going to wire into the roof box the little light that I'm going to put in behind the touring blower as well. So when I get round to building that corner, I think it'll probably be tomorrow now, we will look at getting the electrics for that, and also I'm going to plumb in an electrical cable for the inside of here when we make it glow yellow, and I will hook that into the flux capacitor, the flux band lights. So that's currently where I am. I'm not sure how much more I'm going to get done today, but yeah, thanks for watching, guys.